Welcome to the Informed Pregnancy and Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elliot Berlin. Many of my patients in the office decide to change careers after having a baby, and oftentimes they explore entrepreneurship. But changing careers and launching a business can be quite challenging in general, and especially while you're getting used to the new role of motherhood. My guest today is a business coach for creative and professional service-based women entrepreneurs. She supports the women she coaches to make more money by growing their business in a strategic and inspired way. She shares and utilizes the tools and strategies that she used to grow a multi-seven-figure business and manifest a life better than her dreams. Heidi Stevens, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm so curious about lots of different things, and I know you have a ton. Like, you make me wish I was a woman mother entrepreneur, which is not impossible in today's day and age, but might be too late for me. I don't think I can handle pregnancy.
You seem far from that.
I do seem far from it. Let's start back from the beginning. How did you start out in business? What were you doing originally? Because this is sort of newer for you.
Yep, it is. So I was in the commercial real estate field right out of college and did that for about 15 years and grew my own business and then merged with my now husband, but back then was just my business partner. And so that's how I originally got started in learning about how to build businesses. And
what did you study in college?
Sociology. Nothing to do with.
So you're not a sociologist?
No.
I'm not either. But my wife is an anthropologist. She doesn't do that for a living. She just loves the store.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, we're all anthropologists deep down inside. So you studied sociology. How did you go from that to commercial real estate?
It was just one of those things, like I got out of school and I went and worked for a company for about 6 months and hated it immediately and very quickly realized that I was not of the corporate mold. And I had a friend in real estate and specifically in commercial real estate. And it was one of these things, just kind of talk to my dad, talk to a couple of friends, and I'm not from Los Angeles, so I didn't necessarily have a strong network here. And I just thought, I don't want to be a residential real estate agent. I don't want to be driving people around, on the weekends. I don't want to work after hours. I had a friend that was having success in commercial real estate. I literally had no financial background. I did not know how to use a financial calculator. When I first went in, I was an assistant to get started, and that lasted about 6 months. And I quickly shifted into starting to learn the business.
That's really fast.
But it was fast, and I was young, and
I think you're still young.
Well, thank you. And it was tough. I was one of 3 women in an office of 50 men, and it was definitely the good old boys club. And something inside of me just wanted to prove myself. And kind of compete with the boys, if you will.
How did they feel about that?
I don't really know. I never really cared.
Did you feel like the odd man out? No pun intended?
Oh,
yeah, totally.
Yes, 100%. Always. And so what happened was that...
Did you get treated differently yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm so naive to these things.
Yes, I was I'm 5'2", blonde, 22 or 23 years old, calling people up on the phone and asking them if they wanted to sell their $3 million asset. And it was craziness. And they were like, okay, honey. All right, honey. No, thanks. Bye. Have a good night. And I just,
I still do. I actually do that sometimes. Like, I'll walk into a doctor appointment and I'll think, this happened to me at the eye doctor. I went to the eye doctor, and you just sort of get who you get there for just an eye exam.
Sure.
And she did seem like she just got out of high school, and that's how it just felt to me.
Yeah.
And then it was right after I turned 40, and she's like, oh, how old are you? And I said 40. She's like, yeah, it's already starting. You need reading glasses. I'm like, how do you know? You just got out of high school.
Exactly.
So I can see, like, if I had, valuable real estate, and I'm looking at this young girl, and I'm thinking,
for sure,
I'm nervous.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Young boy, I'd be just as nervous. Maybe.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit different of like a stereotype It seemed. But yeah, I mean, it's a hard industry to break into, and it takes a few years typically to get any traction, and a lot of people will go for 12 to 18 months without making a paycheck, et cetera. But I just put my head down and I made the calls and did what I was told to do, and it worked, and it worked pretty quickly, and so I had some success. And I kind of didn't, I was naive. I didn't know what I didn't know. So here I thought, oh, I did 3 deals in my first year, 18 months or whatever it was, and I just thought I was off and running. And what happened was that pretty quickly, within like 2 to 4-ish years of being in the industry, I completely burned out.
Oh, really?
I was working really long hours. I was making all these cold calls, and I had adrenal fatigue and massive weight gain, and just was really, really unhappy. And yet, having this financial success and kind of putting all this pressure on myself, and I come from a very high-level athletic background, so I've always kind of been competitive and driven. But it wasn't in alignment for me, but yet I was...
That's my job.
Exactly. I didn't know you then.
I know. Now it's my job. I'm making up for lost time.
Yeah. So it was an interesting period of time, and I don't regret any of it because I learned so much.
What kind of sports in your background?
I was a really high-level gymnast up until about the age of 14 or 15, and then I dove competitively at UCLA.
No kidding. So it kind of makes a lot of sense for me. I see I see serious athletes do come out of college like ready to run, ready to sprint, and just jump headfirst in.
That's kind of how I've just done my whole life too. Like I just kind of dive head in, no pun intended, because I was a diver. Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I don't know if it's the discipline that's required for the sport to really excel in sports and athleticism, but it's really cool because I didn't have any of that. I wrestled kind of like half-heartedly in high school, and when I got to college, I was just like, I'm wandering aimlessly for a while.
Yeah, my husband and I, to this day, we love hiring athletes.
Yeah, it makes sense.
They're great. They're disciplined. They're ready to work hard. They've got that kind of mental edge, if you will.
Let's start an athletic headhunting
service. Exactly.
That's my new thing.
Well, it's a real thing. They would come I went to UCLA, and companies would come and present specifically to the athletic department.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so you burned out a little bit.
Burned out, but stayed in it.
Okay.
For another decade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a long time with no adrenal function.
Well, I don't think I did not have adrenal function for a decade.
Okay.
Yeah.
You found your
my gurus.
Yeah. Oh, you took care of yourself.
Yes.
Okay. And then what happened over those 10 years?
A lot. I'll say more.
In a nutshell? In a nutshell?
In a nutshell, yes. What happened is that it really turned me on to a more spiritual path. I was having eating disorders. I was bulimic. I don't know if you know that about me.
No.
So I had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff. And it just really opened up I just started on a spiritual journey and exploration, and kind of one person led to another, and I was in a 12-step program, and that led to a therapist, and that led to a holistic doctor, and that led to someone supporting me in getting my adrenals in order and having my menstrual cycle regularly, and it was an ongoing 10-year period. I ended up getting my master's in spiritual psychology.
Oh, wow.
So
That's different than commercial real estate.
It is different than commercial real estate, and it was like I was living 2 lives. Like I was selling real estate and running a team, and it kept growing for a while. I hired junior agents underneath me, and it's like I would go in, I would just put my head down and work for 5 or 6, 7 hours, and then I would go to my therapist appointment or go to my spiritual community or go to this XYZ, weekend retreat. And it was this kind of push-pull and this back and forth for quite some time. And then I decided that I wanted to get a business partner because I was getting more and more clear that I wanted to take a step back. And it's a long story, but the short version is my then best guy friend and I started talking about merging our businesses. I had met him through the real estate world, and we ended up merging our teams. And we had a similar business model, but very, very different strengths. And so we ended up merging our teams and moving in together all within the same month.
Moving in, you mean personally?
Yeah. He's now my husband.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Is he a former athlete?
He would say he is.
Okay, fine. So I'll take him at his word.
Let's just say that I take credit for our 4-year-old's athletic ability, and it's one of the talking points in our household.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you merged on several fronts.
We did. So we merged. We kept building, and then a couple years ago, after having Harrison, it was just really, really clear that it was time for me to step away from real estate and really go out and support. And, I'm a business coach, and at the core of what I do is I empower women to become their best selves.
Yeah. So, I mean, is leaving commercial real estate the final step in that 10-year burnout? It just seemed like after a while you were doing commercial real estate but not loving it anymore, and that you were getting stressed by it, but found ways to balance the stress.
Yeah.
But it at the end of the day, it doesn't seem to be your passion anymore.
100%. And I knew it all along, but it felt like I didn't 100% know what my passion was. And so in the journey and in the search, I would have ideas and I would try things, but then I just kept coming back to commercial real estate because it's what I knew and it's what was paying the bills. And it was also hard to leave because I was having a lot of quote unquote success in it, and also had built a lifestyle for myself, that cost money. And so there were all these factors that just didn't feel like the right timing to leave. And then when I did merge with Kenny, I took a step back from the brokerage. I took a step back from being the face and negotiating and doing what I thought was the hard stuff. And then he thought I was doing the hard stuff with running the team and marketing and organization and doing more of the COO role of our companies. And that, again, that kind of like fueled me for a couple of years because I was doing something different. But again, it's like in my heart, down deep, I knew it wasn't what I ultimately was meant to do. But
it's cool, at least from that point, that you it sounds like you were puzzle pieces on your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And you got to do the part that you really liked out of all the parts that there were to do. And
totally.
he got to do the parts that he liked to do.
Yeah. And so then that lasted a couple years. But again, it's like I think when we're spiritual people and or in just tune with, like there's something bigger out there for us. At least that's how it is for me. It's like I couldn't just like squelch this small voice inside that was saying like it's like you need to do something different. You need to do something more. Like I would look at all these people that were in the online coaching field and having a lot of visibility and a lot of impact on transforming lives, and I would just think, "Oh, that's just for them. That they're meant for that, and I'm meant to like have an awesome life, but like for whatever reason, I'm just meant to be in real estate." And it took a lot of courage to walk away, simply because, we had like built this thing and built this successful company, and my husband relied on me. Like I was partners with him. I wasn't just like helping him out, a couple hours a day. So,
has it been difficult for him that you left?
I think it was at first, but now it's now been a few years, so we're better off for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, given the two, because you're so intertwined, I'd rather have a happier wife than, a stable business partner.
Totally. Yeah.
So what was the point that made you realize, wait, I can be a coach, or I want to be a coach?
Yeah. So I actually started it in real estate. So while we were running our business, I went and was again, I got my master's in spiritual psychology, and that was kind of it was kind of a training program to be a therapist / coach.
Well, let's talk about spiritual psychology for a second, because
Sure.
I gloss over it because I'm familiar with it. But what is it? What is spiritual psychology?
So the way that I describe it is the study of the unconscious. So whereas psychology is the study of the brain, the spiritual psychology is the study of what's going on underneath that we're not always aware of. And so it's what are the ways that we can bring whether it's beliefs or emotions or patterns that may not be serving us from the past, like up to our conscious so that they can be healed, transformed. And
From our past, just to be specific,
Yeah.
you mean in this life?
In this life.
Okay, so things that we've felt or experienced or lived through
Yes.
that are under the consciousness. So if I can describe the mind, I would say the consciousness versus the unconscious mind. The consciousness is what you're thinking about, experiencing, and feeling right now in this moment, in the
Yes.
present. And the unconscious is everything that you've ever thought, felt, or experienced. And it's sort of, if you can picture an iceberg, it's the little tip that's the consciousness, and deep beneath the surface is this huge unconscious warehouse of
You did
stuff.
a way better job describing it than I did.
Oh,
Yes,
thanks.
that's perfect.
Well, I couldn't sell an office space to save my life, so we all have strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
So you work on stuff that's in there, and you help bring it to the surface?
Well, that's an interesting. So I have my master's in spiritual psychology, but that's not necessarily what I do every single day with my clients.
No, but I'm just saying is that a goal of spiritual psychology is to sort of go into that deep, like cleaning out the garage, sort of?
I would say that there's an element of that, but it's also just a trusting and a knowing that when you are holding a loving space and when you're connected to your higher self, that whatever is there that's ready to be healed and ready to be transformed is going to bubble up and be available. Like, it's not about going and like doing a huge excavation of like what are all these things, but when you're in kind of that type of program or in a healing space, whether it's with a therapist or a healer or a group of people or a retreat type setting, typically those things that are limiting us in some way or form are more free to come to the surface. So then it's actually training. I was trained in like tools and modalities to help transform those things when they do come up.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I loved it.
Did you do it for your own
Yes.
journey and searching? Not necessarily to be a spiritual psychologist?
Well, I went in specifically as a way out of real estate. I went in thinking, oh, well, as long as I have some type of
something to fall back
title
on.
behind me, then I can become a life coach and then I'll be happy, right?
Yeah.
And what I found was that I actually can be happy doing anything, as cliche as that sounds. And through that process, through that 2-year period of getting my master's, that's when Kenny and I merged our business. That's when things started really working in my personal life. That's when we grew the business. And again, from a career perspective, I was like sustained for a period of time until I was like, okay, it's time to start coaching.
Okay. First of all, when you talk about coaching and the work that you do now, you light up.
I love it.
You just light up. It makes me so happy to see it. So what I want to do is take a little break and then come back and find out more about what it means to be a coach and specifically the type of coaching that you do.
Sure.
And then also for our listeners who might be thinking about, hey, maybe I need a career change now, especially around this time of motherhood. Maybe some like takeaway tips that we can give to be like, here's how you can get started on your path, or things to think about and things to consider.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Heidi Stevens on the Informed Pregnancy Podcast.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.
Welcome back to the Informed Pregnancy Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elliot Berlin, and we're continuing our fascinating discussion on entrepreneurial coaching and success with our guest, Heidi Stevens. Okay, let's talk about coaching. You said you don't really sort of do spiritual psychology. What is coaching to you? How does it work?
So the difference between psychology, which I think of psychology as, really kind of a therapy model, and coaching is that as a coach, I'm really forward thinking. So if someone's wanting to, deal with something or has something coming up from the past, I'm willing to talk about it, to notate it, to work through it. And I'm not a therapist that's going to sit there for, an hour-long session and go through the entire story. I'm actually much more interested in what's the bottom line. Let's use this for your own healing, growth, opportunity, etc. And now how are we going to use this to get you where you want to go next?
No, it sounds like we, as your client, we need to be honest with you. And honest with ourselves.
Yes.
Oh, that's so hard to do. Is that hard for people? Do they just open up to you?
I don't find that it's hard because I think that I hold a really, the feedback that I get from my clients is that I have a really loving yet fierce way of working with them.
That makes sense.
So they know, I think they feel safe with me. And, it is a really safe space. And I'm going to tell you what I think and what you need to know to move forward.
Well, we
and
have
what
to
you
be
want
willing
to
to be honest with ourselves. That's the key. But I can see how you would sort of drag that out of people.
Yeah, I think that, to the degree that someone is available to be, I don't think someone would come and work with me if they're not available to work with themselves.
Just in the first 20 minutes of talking to you, I'm not, this is how I feel in my heart. I'm inspired to be honest with myself.
Well, thank you.
By your story so far.
I'm really honored to hear that.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, so who is the type of person who hires a coach like yourself, and what role do you play for them?
Sure. So most of my clients are creative entrepreneurs. So what I find is that they're really, really, really great at what they do, but they don't necessarily have a business mind or acumen.
So many people like that.
Yeah.
Especially in the creative space.
Yes.
This is a different part of the brain.
Exactly. And I love, I'm in awe of my clients because of how talented they are, artistically. So, I work with mostly service-based entrepreneurs. So graphic designers, photographers, professional organizers, interior designers, other coaches, there's health coaching, there's business coaching, there's relationship coaching that people get into. So, service-based creatives, and I really support them in putting the pieces together to take what they're so passionate about and so good at and actually make a business out of it and make money, because that's why we got into what we were doing in the first place.
Right. But sometimes those kind of service providers are more about the service than about themselves. So
yeah, it breaks my heart because what I see is that, whether they just started it right out of school or, a lot of them took the leap and left a corporate gig and had the courage to go out and do something on their own. And what started as a passion and something that they love to do, then it just turns into another job because they're slaving away working whatever it is, whether it's 60, 70, 80 hours a week and barely making ends meet. And
but how do you change that?
Well, that's what I do.
I know, but roughly, are you literally doing the micro steps of business of where you're investing time and effort and sort of figuring out which ones are paying off and which ones aren't and slicing away the parts that aren't working? Are you helping them lower expenses? Is it that kind of business coaching?
So it's a two-pronged approach. I like to say that I bring both a spiritual and a very physical, real-world aspect to the work I do. So on the physical, concrete, tangible, a lot of my clients, not all of them, but a lot of them are wanting to grow their businesses in an online way. So I support them in getting really clear with their packages, with their pricing, with their their marketing on social media, with their emails that they're sending out, with the copy and the messaging, like all of those kind of concrete, tangible things. You wouldn't believe as like how many of these amazing, amazing women, and I'm sure men, but I work with women, are not charging anywhere close to what they should be for their services. So that ties back into the more what I'll call spiritual. Feminine work, which is understanding their value and gaining confidence and getting visible and believing in themselves and really doing the mindset and the deeper work to get them to a place where they can go out and own what they're doing and charge their worth.
It's I watch Shark Tank with my kids.
I love Shark Tank.
We love Shark Tank. It's just fun to watch these creative products that come up. It's sort of fun to watch entrepreneurs and like how they got started and what drove them to do it. And you can sort of right away spot the ones who sort of have a better business sense of, in addition to whatever creative thing they've done, and the ones who are very creative but really don't have any business acumen. But sometimes, you talked about the online thing where somebody starts a project that needs or requires the internet to grow, and they'll just come up with some dumb product, and all of a sudden they have $250,000 in sales. And you're like, how does that happen? Because other people, who have an idea or a product try to go out and do it, and there's just, it just seems like they're talking in an empty room.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak to how everyone is, how everyone's making their money. I can speak to what I, talk a lot about too with my clients. And I mean, there's so many different ways. And, I'm just now really starting to get into the world of social media advertising and Facebook advertising and what that looks like. And, it's like the internet marketing game, if you will.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Those things can be really daunting. But if you own it, if you know how to spend the time and money that you have and use those tools the right way, you can build up a sizable niche audience pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
But if you don't know how to use them, you can waste a lot of time and waste a lot of money and not get anywhere. Just, again, be talking in an empty room.
Yes.
So those are the kind of coaches that I think are also very hard to find. But I think that if you do have a good idea and a good passion for it in some direction, then you can be really successful as an entrepreneur today from your home.
Which is so exciting, and especially being a mom, and having one on the way. It's like I just love the fact that I get to do what I do.
Oh yeah, we didn't
home.
mention that you have a little nugget in your belly right now.
I do.
Number 2 coming soon. First of all, how come you only work with women?
I just find that they're a little bit more open and receptive to some of the words I use and the more spiritual feminine speak, if you will. And it's, I just love working with women, and I just have such a passion for empowering them. And I'm really in the business now of running groups, and so I think that there's also an aspect of creating, gathering women. They feel more safe with other women,
sure,
versus having the.
What does that mean? A group?
So for example, I have groups that have, 30, 40 women in them, and I run them through online programs, teaching them content and modules. And then we get online and we'll do video coaching sessions where I coach and give laser coaching to all of them, but they're all on video. So they're all I'm literally building an online community with these women to help them build their businesses.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's cool that we have that ability today, because you can have somebody in the middle of a small town and wherever.
Exactly.
And they can still have a full community.
Yeah, it's awesome. I have people from the East Coast. I have yet to have an international client, but I've got quite a few people from Australia and the UK that are in my that are like kind of in my following and in my community and in some of my free groups. But I haven't worked with someone yet internationally.
Well, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
After this, we have an international following. So
Oh, amazing. You never know.
By the end of tonight, it might be happening. So when somebody decides I want to change careers, at what point is the right time to reach out to a coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I often recommend somebody working with a life coach to get started, especially if they're, while they're still working in their job, to really help them get clear on what they want to do. I personally don't work with people who don't have a clear idea of what it is they want to do. So, but there are absolutely people out there that do that and help them find their niche and, help them get clear on like whatever it is the vision is or the work that they want to do. Once somebody has an idea of, this is my next career path, that's where I would step in and help them build a foundation, get them on the right track with their marketing, et cetera, and get them in the right headspace to really go out and make money doing
So
what
really
they
from
do.
the early stages, they can already start working with you once they know what they want to do and they're ready to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a group program that's specifically geared towards people that are more on the beginning stages. And then, as people progress, I have like a high-level mastermind that's a small, intimate group of women, and they're already, having a lot of success in their business, and they're looking more to scale and to leverage themselves and to build out team and to, hire multiple employees, et cetera.
Wow. So every step of the way.
Yeah.
Heidi's in your corner.
Yeah.
I mean, how often does someone meet with you?
Well, it just depends on the group or the package that they're in. So I have just a very, very small number of one-on-one clients that I talk to 3 times a month.
Okay.
And then, like my high-level mastermind, when I say meet, it's online. We meet every other week, and then I have one call with them. And then it just depends. Like I have a 5-month group that they're like constantly in contact with me, but in a group setting. There's lots of different ways of. It just really depends on what
where they are and
what course they're in at any given time.
Sounds really. I want to be a high-level mastermind of something.
I know, it's fun. I mean, I'm as a client, I'm in 2 masterminds this year, helping me grow my business. So I'm a fan of personal development. I'm a fan of growth and community. I participate in it as a client, and then I really take everything I'm learning and doing and knowing, and then support my community with it.
In the group, especially of moms, right? I know that, or parents in general, but in your case, moms.
Yeah.
It's oftentimes really challenging in today's environment to find balance.
Yeah.
There are some moms I find in our practice who would love nothing more than stay home, be around their babies, take care of the home, take care of the baby. Other moms who do that, but also really love being in the business world or service providing world, and also, doing that kind of productivity and that kind of work, and everything in between. So I think that's something that everybody kind of struggles with. I struggle with it as a dad, and I think the women struggle more, generally speaking, with how to balance work and home.
Yeah, I don't believe in it. I don't believe in balance. I think that it's this carrot that is dangling out in front of all of our faces that's like we're never going to get. And I actually really like to talk about seasons. I think that there are seasons where, for whatever, I know for me personally, where I'm just a slightly like quieter, more of an internal quiet, and like really want to spend time, at home or with my son. And And then there's a season where it's go time in my business. And it's like, it's all about priorities at any given time. And I talk a lot about, with the women that I work with and just on a lot of the stuff I do, about giving yourself permission to do you, like to do you. I think that so much of having this quote unquote balance is like this idea that we're like trying to be like perfect moms and perfect wives, and we've got to look perfect. So then you've got to get to the gym this amount of time. And it's just like, it's like so exhausting to try and like live up to all of these ideas and of, what we're supposed to be. So it's like, I'm a really big fan, and this is what I coach, of like tuning in and getting clear on what's true for you. Like if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, rock it out, own it. Like no mommy guilt, no shame, none of that. And look, and if you want to go to work, whether you have to or you choose to, I chose to. And sometimes I think that's harder than
Sure.
than having to. I chose to go back to work. Yeah. And I didn't grow up with a mom that had that, like my mom stayed at home. So that's all I ever knew. And for me to go, okay, wait, I'm going to get a nanny and then I'm going to go to work and I'm not going to be with my child all day. Like, am I a terrible mom? And so balance for me doesn't exist. And instead it's like, what is this season about for me? Am I, I'm going to go into a season soon where I'm going to be nurturing my baby, but I'm also going to have some support because I love what I do so much that I'm not planning on stopping. And there's probably some women out there that would think that, not taking a certain time off is they may judge that. And there's other, so it's just like, just let it go. Let it go and do you.
The things that you're saying right now about the balance they hit me two different ways. Number one is how refreshing that would feel to let go of the idea of balance and to just assume that only a small number of lottery winners actually feel balance in their life, right? And for everybody else, you just do the best you can in those areas and don't feel guilty and don't have regrets about it.
We're all doing the best we can.
Right.
We're all doing the best we can. We're all like holding it together,
But the other side of that coin is there was a period of a few years, because I feel like life is a treadmill. My personal workout program, by the way, is a 12-step program. I walk 12 steps and then I'm done working out. But I feel like life is a treadmill, and you just, as a college kid, maybe, it's moving at a pace that's comfortable. And then, you get married and all of a sudden the incline goes up and you have a kid and hurdles start popping up on top of it. And you have two kids and it's just moving even faster. And at some point it got to a point where I just felt like all I have to do is stay on this treadmill. Like everything is trying to throw me off. And I worked so much that my kids went from like newborn to 7 years old like that, and I wasn't there. So when I'm talking about balance, I'm talking about just like that wasn't healthy. There was another way to do it, and so I made a lot of changes in my life so that I can be home more. As it turns out, they actually want me to be home, which is cool to find out.
I'm sure they do.
But I made a lot of changes, and that's what I mean by balance. I don't mean the utopia where you feel like you're giving the perfect amount to your job and work and career and the perfect amount to your spouse and partner and kids, but just not being so out of balance.
Yeah. What I can say to that is that, what I help my clients do is really, as cliche as this sounds, is like create a life by design. Like, what is the ultimate vision? What is the ultimate, like what are you desiring? So as a mom, if you're desiring more time, I'm going to take them and I'm going to look at, okay, I'm just going to use an entrepreneur, not someone working in the, someone that's a 9 to 6 or 9 to 7, because that's not typically who the women I'm working with. But if the women that I'm working with are working those hours and they're like, I want to be home more, I'm going to look at, okay, what is the monthly nut? What is the monthly number that you are wanting to achieve, or that you're thinking that you're going to make by putting in these 10 to 12 hours? right? And how can you work smarter, not just harder? So I'm all about taking a step back and like assessing. And I really support my clients in getting off of the treadmill and getting off of the the daily grind.
I love to get off the treadmill. It's my favorite thing.
Exactly. It's like get off of the grind and take a step back. And I'm not saying things are easy or that it's just like all like, oh yeah, just, think about it and get clear in your desires and then it just happens. No, it is about being strategic and putting in the hours if need be, but it's about taking a step back and looking at what are you up to and what is it that you want and is this the season to push or is this the season? And so for me, I'll just, so like my husband takes my son to preschool. I obviously don't have, 4 kids, but my husband takes my son to preschool. We're together in the morning. And then I work. Like I'm focused. I don't like take a lunch break, but then I pick him up every day at 4:45 or 5. And there are some times or some seasons where I need to have some support in like from 4:30 to 6:30 to get some things done, but most of the time that's my time with him.
Yeah.
And what I try to do is to turn my cell phone over, not off, but to be present so that those 2.5 hours of being present with my kid, is a long time.
It's, Dr. Harvey Karp talks about feeding the meter, where you just sit down and interact with your children or your partner wholeheartedly with no distractions, even whatever it's going to be, an hour, 2 hours, even a half an hour, and then dedicating yourself to work wholeheartedly and not distracted by your kid or your partner or your family for the 2 hours, and how when you laser focus on the one that you're doing without the distraction of the other, you get so much more done. So the bonding and the mindfulness and the being with your family is so different than when you're also sort of on the phone and sort of typing an email and things like that. And so you feed the meter. You put in.
Yep. And I think so much of what you're talking about is like mindfulness and being present. And we all have the same number of hours in the day, and it's like we all have choice. Like even if you don't feel like you do, like everybody has choice in how we're using those, and so yeah, it's like I think so much of it is in the mind. Like those days where I'm like thinking about my Instagram feed instead of like what my child is saying. It's like I don't feel like he got fed and I don't feel like I bonded with him.
Yeah.
So it's like just as best I can, and I'm constantly distracted. No one's perfect, and like as best I can to just put that aside, be mindful with him. And then go back to my cell phone at night if I need to, or choose to spend that time consciously with my husband.
I love it. I have a few closing thoughts, and then I'll ask you for a closing thought. But first of all, it is almost your season to push.
I know.
Getting close.
Oh my gosh.
And you add another one to the mix. I'm very excited for that. Second of all, 2 things that you said to me are so powerful. In order for me to find a better relationship between work and home, I did have to take a big step back. And you're running so fast on the treadmill, you just don't want to fall off, But then you realize that if you take the step back and assess the situation with a level head, you realize you can be doing things totally differently and still be okay on the business side and career side and financial side, and all of a sudden have all this extra time.
Yeah.
Another thing is you sort of sounded a little Stephen Covey-esque when you said, picture where you want to be. He always says, begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So you can't, if you just start building a house without a blueprint, you're just going to make a lot of mistakes and have to do a lot of rebuilding. And same with your career. Where do you want to be? Like you said, do you want to be a stay-at-home mom? Then that's the end goal. How do you work out everything around it to get from here to there? You want to be balancing both, and how do you do it? That's really powerful. And the last thing is you kind of remind me of my wrestling coach, getting back to the sports when I was actually athletic for a minute. When you're on the mat and you have no oxygen because you're just exerting all your muscles, and you're just sort of in all the training and workouts that lead up to it, all the practices, you're just doing these movements over and over and over again so they become instinctual. But in the moment, you're trying to think, but you can't see the big picture because you're on the mat, you're in the battle, and you also don't have very much oxygen. So you're not thinking so clearly. So your instinct might say one thing, but your coach standing at the side of the mat might be screaming something else. And between the two, you go with the coach because he's got oxygen and he's got full picture. And it sounds a lot like what you do. And the fact that you yourself as a coach have a coach makes that so clear. You can't be your own coach. You have to be looking at the big picture from the outside, and you have to be the one with the oxygen. So it really makes a lot of sense to me. And
that's great.
I just come back to the fact that when I come back into this world, I want to be a female entrepreneur coached by Heidi Stevens.
Look, there's a reason why all the top athletes and, many of the top entrepreneurs and, top business people and leaders have high-level coaches, practice things like visualization, practice things like meditation and mindfulness. And I mean, this is what the Olympians do. And I didn't necessarily take all these practices from my athletic career. It's like I've learned them in different ways throughout my own journey and my own personal development. But I appreciate you kind of bringing it back to athletics because that just feels like a completely different lifetime for me. But I do see how they are connected. I don't think about that often, though.
Yeah, they really are. Heidi, where can we find you online?
So you can find me at HeidiStevensInc.com. I am also on Instagram, which is at Heidi Stevens Inc.
I'm going right there now to find you and
Yay.
follow you and learn from you. And you don't even have to be a female entrepreneur to follow you on Instagram.
You don't.
Yeah, we can pick up tips. We can spy and pick up tips. Heidi, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your expertise with us on the podcast. And at home, thanks for listening. If you have a topic you want to discuss, just send your suggestions to info@informedpregnancy.com. And then go ahead and visit us online for more pregnancy and parenting media at informedpregnancy.com.
Doctor, give me the news. I got a whole lot of questions for you. This kid's gonna test my